The stars were silent, but the screams from the outer veil were louder than any battle cry the Androl Dominion had ever recorded. 1,000 Imperial sensors went blind the moment the anomaly pierced Sector 9 Zeta, and within minutes, the message repeaters started failing. Not from enemy fire, from something deeper, something ancient, something wrong. Supreme Warlord Dravox loomed over the control deck on the Dominion's flagship, the Sovereign Omen. His scaled fingers tightened on the iron rail as the playback of the last transmission from Station Merrick 4 crackled one last time before silence. No static, just nothingness. A dead channel. "Replay the last 20 seconds, Dravox growled, mandibles twitching in irritation. The technician, pale and shivering, obeyed. The voice came through, raspy, human-like, full of agony and awe. "It's not a fleet. It's a graveyard coming alive. We fired everything. It smiled." Then a heavy thud. Screaming. Silence. Dravox had seen war. He'd ordered the extinction of 3 sentient races, each resistant to the Dominion's rule. He'd witnessed planet-wide executions. Yet nothing in his centuries of blood and conquest sounded like fear. True fear. Until now. He turned to the War Council. "You said the humans were wiped out during the Terran Purge. That Earth was glassed." "It was," General Varn hissed. "By our records, they were extinct 200 cycles ago." "Well then explain this!" Dravox roared, smashing a claw against the projection. The image zoomed in on a fleet formation that defied logic. Ships with hulls blacker than void, shaped like bones. Floating cathedrals of war, draped in torn banners. Some still showed the Terran insignia. Long thought erased from the galactic annals. But these weren't any Terran designs the Empire had documented. They were older, angrier. And they moved with the purpose of ghosts, unwilling to rest. "They're not responding to our hails," another officer muttered, "but they broadcast one thing on a loop, primitive Terran code. We've decrypted it." The message flashed across the holoscreen. "Judgment comes." This time, no survivors. Panic wasn't a concept the Dominion tolerated, but now you could taste it in the air like poison. Back in the ruins of Sol's outer rim, aboard the lead vessel of the rogue armada, Captain Jace Harlan stood alone in front of the altar on the bridge. He wasn't a man of faith. Not anymore. Not after watching his home get turned into a memory, then erased from history. "Ready them," he ordered quietly. His crew, augmented warriors who once wore dog tags, now wearing the legacy of the lost, nodded in silence. They weren't entirely human anymore. Decades of exile, tech fusion, and wrath had transformed them into something else. Something that scared even their creators, before their creators vanished. "They thought we died," Harlan whispered to himself, staring out at the vastness. "Now we make them remember." A voice crackled through his neural comm, feminine but mechanical. "First contact re-established with the Dominion forward scout. No survivors. They tried to run." "Good." He smiled darkly. "Let fear carry the message. Tell the galaxy. The Terrans are coming home." The war room aboard the Sovereign Omen reeked of tension and burning ozone. Holograms flickered under the sharp gaze of Supreme Warlord Dravox, whose expression grew darker with every passing minute. On the screen before him, orbital feeds collapsed one by one as the anomaly advanced. What had begun as a minor curiosity, strange sensor echoes from a forgotten system, had now turned into a full-blown security collapse along the Dominion's eastern flank. "Give me a live feed," Dravox barked, his voice making the nearest officer jolt. The technician, scales pale as sand, shook his head nervously. "We don't have one anymore. The last probe burned out trying to get close. It started emitting human brainwave patterns before it melted." Impossible, hissed General Varn, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. Humans don't have the technological capacity to override Dominion protocols, let alone manipulate neural code frequencies. They didn't, the technician whispered, but something wearing their face did. Dravox clenched his claws around the armrest of his war throne. Deploy 7th Fleet. I want this infestation scorched. I want every atom of that system turned to vapor. He didn't wait for objections. The holograms shifted as orders rippled through the Dominion's military hierarchy. Massive carriers and dreadnoughts began forming up in sectors 14 through 18, enough firepower to erase a dozen rebellious systems. Let them come, he growled. Let's see if ghosts bleed. Meanwhile, aboard the lead Terran vessel, Nemesis of Silence, Captain Jace Harlan stood before a wall of names etched in scorched steel. Every single one a soul lost during the purge. Some he'd fought beside, some he'd loved, some he'd failed. He pressed a gloved hand against the cold surface. We didn't die for nothing. Behind him, his second-in-command, Ty Loren, approached with soft, augmented footsteps. Half his body was armor now, not by choice but by necessity. The machine parts kept him breathing, fighting. 7th Fleet's en route. Should make contact within 18 hours, Ty said. They think they're bringing the pain. Jace didn't respond immediately. His eyes lingered on a name near the bottom. Rebecca Harlan. His sister. Only 17 when Earth burned. I remember when the Dominion came through Io, Jace finally said. They didn't even speak, just started burning. Cities, forests, oceans, just wiped them. Like we were a bug underfoot, all because we wouldn't kneel. Ty's jaw clenched. They made a mistake thinking vengeance had a shelf life. Jace turned, his expression unreadable. No, they made a mistake thinking we were weak. The Dominion believed wiping out Earth would break humanity, but what they killed, that was the version of us that cared, that dreamed. What rose from the ashes was something far worse, something patient. He walked over to the command deck, voice steady. Bring the fleet in tight formation. Code. Harrow Doctrine. Tell the captains, no survivors, no signals. We erase them like they erased us. Ty nodded and turned, the command already transmitting to the Phantom network that connected the Death Armada. Invisible, silent, terrifying. Hours later, in the blackness near the edge of Dominion space, the 7th Fleet emerged from warp like a spear of flame. 200 capital ships, thousands of interceptors and gunships, a storm of military might that had dominated the stars for millennia. Admiral Krethok, a three-hearted monster of a commander, stood proud aboard his flagship, the triumphal Maw. We've hunted pirates, rebels, even Black Sun cultists, he bellowed to his bridge crew. Today we extinguish the last whisper of humanity. He didn't know he was speaking to the dead. The Terran fleet didn't decloak, didn't taunt. It just arrived. Silent, unseen, like rot blooming beneath a veneer of health. First came the gravity distortions, minor anomalies, easily mistaken for natural ripples. Then the stars blinked out. Not from movement, from mass. "They're here!" screamed a Dominion sensor officer. "They're bypassing our scanners using something unknown. I don't even have hull signatures, just void." The Dominion fleet opened fire. Missiles the size of skyscrapers, laser beams that could crack moons, kinetic rail slugs that broke the sound barrier in space. All aimed at nothing. Then the counterstrike came. It wasn't pretty. The first Terran strike took out an entire Dominion battle group without a single warning ping. Ships were impaled by hyper-density rods traveling faster than light, called ghost nails, by the enemy survivors. Except there weren't many survivors to name them. The triumphal Maw shook as explosions rocked its starboard flank. "What is this?" Krethok roared. The view screen flickered to life, static humming through. A human face appeared, weathered, scarred. One eye augmented with a red synthetic implant. Jace Harlan. "You killed Earth," he said coldly. "Now the Earthborn return." Then static. And hell. Dozens of Terran ships decloaked at once, revealing what they really were. Not just warships, but mobile vengeance engines, built from forgotten tech, dead gods, and broken promises. Their weapons weren't clean or sterile. They ripped and mangled. They screamed as they fired, mimicking the voices of the dead. Back on the Sovereign Omen, Dravox stared at the live telemetry. The 7th Fleet was gone. Not routed. Erased. "Impossible?" he muttered. He watched the data again. Ships disappeared not from fire, but from sheer terror. Crews ejected into the void just to avoid staying inside those ships. Weapons systems overloaded. AI cores corrupted themselves. Entire dreadnoughts turned around and self-destructed. "New signals detected," the tech said in a whisper. "They're not jamming us. They're just overriding reality in their radius. This isn't tech. This is mythology turned mechanical." Dravox turned to General Varn. "What are we fighting?" Varn didn't answer, because he was gone. A pool of ichor stained the floor where he had stood, and scrawled in it were the Terran words, one by one. Deep within the Terran fleet, Jace stood before the Fleet Council. Each commander was a relic in their own right. Once human, now something more. They didn't speak in protocols. They spoke in vengeance. "7th Fleet is gone," Jace said. "They'll know now. They'll try diplomacy, or religion, maybe even mercy." The council laughed, a dry metallic echo that sent shivers down even enhanced spines. "Let them pray," one captain rasped. "To who?" asked another. "Their gods don't answer anymore." Jace smiled. Exactly. The war had started without declaration. But now, it had purpose. And purpose was more dangerous than any weapon. The Dominion held the stars for over 10,000 years. From the iron-forged gates of Orkan Varn to the glowing tomb worlds of Soltar. Their rule was uncontested. Their history carved in blood and stone, their laws unquestioned. But now their legends were cracking. In the halls of the High Tribunal, chaos had replaced command. Dravox stood alone in the central chamber, watching his greatest generals argue like children. These were not fresh-faced tacticians or cowards. These were architects of extinction, masterminds of subjugation. And yet the memory of the 7th Fleet still echoed like a death knell in all their voices. "We must summon the Dark Maw Protocol," one barked. "Release the Black Suns. They were bred to eat anomalies like this." "Fools!" shouted another. "The Black Suns failed to contain the cult of entropy. You want to unleash them near our core worlds? It's better than waiting to be hunted like prey." Their voices rose until Dravox slammed his claw into the war altar, cracking the obsidian slab. "Enough!" he roared. "You fear shadows. You fear phantoms. We are the Dominion, the architects of the stars." "But these are no ordinary enemies," murmured one elder general. "Their tactics defy understanding. They do not engage conventionally. They prey on fear. They use trauma. Our crews report psychological infiltration, auditory hallucinations." "I said enough," Dravox growled. "We're not fighting ghosts. We're fighting what remains of humanity." Someone laughed bitterly in the corner. It was strategist Comdar, rarely seen without a plan. His grin was grim. "Not what remains, Warlord. What evolved. We purged the humans, yes. Their bones fertilized our victories. But we forgot the most important truth of war." Dravox narrowed his eyes. "Speak." Comdar leaned forward. "Desperation breeds monstrosities." Years ago, long before Dominion war engines glassed Earth, There were whispers, not among soldiers, but among spooks. Black projects, hidden labs, rebel cells with unknown benefactors. As the purge advanced, some humans didn't fight back with weapons. They disappeared, vanished into the black void between systems, not because they feared death, because they had a plan. These were engineers, biohackers, geneticists, rogue AIs, and broken survivors. They took humanity's worst nightmares and made them into reality. They took pain and bent it into propulsion. They took extinction and forged it into a fleet. And they waited. On the command deck of the Nemesis of Silence, Jace Harlan studied the incoming data streams. His ships were silent again, cloaked within the folds of gravity pockets. They weren't resting. They were calculating, calibrating the pain. He leaned over the holotable and pulled up footage from the Dominion's central communications hub. Surveillance hijacked, Dominion faces flickering in confusion. He spoke into the feed. You lied about peace. You called it pacification. You called it reform. You said we refused to adapt, but we did. You just weren't ready for what that adaptation looked like. Ty stood beside him, a jagged grin under his scarred face. They called us primitives. We're the future, Jace said flatly, the part they forgot to fear. He tapped the interface, and across thousands of Dominion channels, a single image blinked on. Earth. Not as it was, but scorched, smoking, dead. Then, below it, the message, "We remember." Dominion Prime's skies dimmed as new protocols activated. Entire defense satellites turned inward. Panic quarantines hit over 40 star systems. Dravox ordered the relocation of the royal gene lineages. If this war turned truly asymmetrical, the very bloodlines of command would be under threat. He summoned an old name, one they'd kept in stasis for centuries, Kyle Oryx, a half-human, half-Dominion genetic hybrid created during the early conquest of Earth. Deemed unstable, deemed unnecessary, now deemed essential. You kept me on ice for this? Oryx hissed as he emerged from the cryo-vault. His body was scarred from birth. Too Dominion to be human, too human to be Dominion. You're the only one who knows them, Dravox growled. I knew humans, Oryx snapped. These aren't humans anymore. They're war-given shape. You'll fight them, and you'll win. Oryx smiled. Then you better let me off the leash. In the cold void between star systems, the Terran fleet advanced again. Their next target, the Forge World Akaran, a planet-spanning factory that supplied over 40% of the Dominion's dreadnought weapons. Its surface glowed red with endless production, and its orbit swarmed with drone fighters. They expected a siege. Instead, they got a massacre. The Terrans didn't fire a single shot in the first wave. Instead, they released the fog, a gray molecular mist that slipped through every ventilation system, every gap in the hull. It wasn't a gas. It was a memory virus. The workers started to remember Earth, started to feel the agony of Terran extinction. Some screamed, others dropped to their knees. A few blew their own heads off. When the Dominion military finally responded, the fog had already rewritten their minds. One worker recorded a final message before the planetary comms were jammed. I see their faces when I close my eyes. They're here. They never left. They just waited for us to forget. 2 hours later, Akaran was silent. Jace stood aboard the Nemesis, watching as the Terran fleet moved on. We don't need numbers, he said. Just memories sharp enough to bleed. But the Dominion wasn't finished. Kale Oryx took command of a prototype fleet, a fusion of Dominion tech and forbidden Terran models taken from ancient wars. He called it Project Chimera, and he knew where Jace would go next. Sol, not because there was anything left of Earth, but because ghosts always returned to their grave. The Sol system was silent now. No transmissions, no satellites, just dust, asteroids, and orbiting ruins. Where Earth once spun, vibrant and defiant, there was only a jagged sphere of blackened stone. The Dominion had named it Demonstratum after the Purge, a symbol of what happened to Defiance. Now, the nemesis of silence drifted into that orbit, and every surviving sensor array in the galaxy turned to it. Jace Harlan stood on the bridge, staring out at the corpse of his home. "Never thought I'd see her again," he muttered. Ty Loren stood beside him, quiet, hands clenched behind his back. "There's no blue left, just bone." "No, there's memory," Jace said, "and memory is fuel." Around them, the Terran fleet began a slow, ceremonial formation. Each ship moved with practiced solemnity. This wasn't just a war zone. It was a cathedral, a graveyard. "Activate beacon pulse," Jace ordered. A single wave of quantum particles rippled through the void, bouncing off shattered satellites, echoing through collapsed stardocks. The signal was old Earth code. Home. He turned to his comms officer. "Open channel." Seconds later, Dominion transmissions lit up like wildfire. Dravox appeared first, his face bloated with fury, scales twitching with tension. "You desecrate this place with your filth. You will die here like the rest." "Funny," Jace said, calm as stone. "I thought we already did." Then another face appeared. One Jace didn't expect. Kyle Oryx, scarred, hybrid, and half Dominion, but unmistakably human underneath. "You remember me?" Kyle asked. Jace's expression hardened. "You were a kid during the Purge. Your mother died on Europa Station. Your father was the Dominion officer who betrayed us to save your DNA." Kyle's smile was cruel. "So you do remember." Jace leaned in. "What are you doing with them?" "Same thing you're doing. Surviving," Kale said. "But unlike you, I've adapted. I don't need vengeance. I need order. Peace. You're chasing ghosts. I'm building a future." "Peace," Jace spat. "You're just another weapon on a Dominion leash. You fight for the same empire that murdered your blood." Kale's eyes flared. "Don't speak to me about blood. I was left behind. My own kind looked at me and saw a mistake." Jace's voice lowered. "You were a child. We protected you." "No," Kale said coldly. "You pitied me. Dominion gave me purpose. Now I'm giving it back." The comms went dead. The Dominion's Project Chimera fleet emerged from warp at the edge of Sol, black and gold hulls gleaming with forbidden tech. Massive hybrid constructs powered by Terran neural code fused with Dominion Warmind AI. Kale's flagship, the Cradle of Silence, led the charge. Unlike other Dominion ships, Chimera-class vessels didn't broadcast fear. They swallowed it. Their presence didn't chill the bones. It numbed them. They were surgical, soulless. On the Nemesis, Ty looked uneasy. "He's using our tech, our design language, our pain." Jace nodded. "They think by wearing our skin they understand us. But they forgot something." "What?" Jace's eyes narrowed. "We didn't build those ships for war. We built them for revenge. You can copy the bones, but you'll never understand the rage that powered them. The battle for Sol began not with gunfire, but with silence. The Terran Armada held position, unmoving, waiting. The Chimera fleet advanced in perfect formation, calculating, efficient." Then Jace gave the command. "Let them speak first." Chimera vessels opened fire. Energy beams sliced through void, targeting vulnerable nodes, just like the Dominion had trained them. But they missed. Not because their aim was bad, because the Terran ships weren't there anymore. One by one they disappeared into folded space-time pockets, quantum cloaks, entropy wells. Chimera AIs began to lag, not from jamming, from overthinking. The Terran ships reappeared behind enemy lines and struck, but they didn't use traditional weapons. They unleashed sound. Not just any sound. Earth's last radio transmissions. Laughter, crying, music, prayers, children singing, 1 billion souls in one scream. Chimera systems glitched, their AI matrices flooded with emotional input. Dominion tech had no answer. These weren't codes, these were feelings, weaponized. The cradle of silence rocked violently. Kyle staggered. "Block the transmissions," he barked. "We can't," his engineer shouted. "They're not transmitting on frequencies. They're embedding the data into our perception layers." Kyle's vision blurred. He saw a little girl, human, burned, crying. She looked like his mother. He staggered backward. "No." Jace watched the chaos unfold with steel in his spine. "They're breaking," Ty muttered. "No," Jace said quietly. "He's breaking." Kyle came back on the comm, breathing hard. What did you do?" Jace's voice was cold. "You wanted to wear our history. Now you're going to drown in it." Kale's ship fired again, blindly this time. The nemesis dodged with inhuman grace. "Finish him," Ty said. Jace hesitated. There was something in Kale's eyes, not just rage, regret. "We wait," Jace ordered. "Let the past catch up to him." Kyle sat alone in his chamber, watching the feedback loops. The girl's face wouldn't go away. He remembered Europa. The screams. The fire. His mother trying to shield him from the Dominion soldiers who had orders to cleanse the bloodline. He'd survived because she begged them. Because she died. And now he fought for the very empire that did it. "I'm not them," he whispered. "I'm better." But even he didn't believe it anymore. Back in Dominion Prime, Dravox watched the live footage with a mixture of disgust and despair. "Shut it down," he barked. "But sir—" "I said shut it all down." He turned to his remaining generals. "We underestimated them, again. Not because they have better weapons, but because they remember things we tried to erase." One general whispered, "What do we do now?" Dravox's voice was venom. "We erase them again, this time completely." But it was too late. Across the galaxy, oppressed systems saw what happened in Sol. They saw the Chimera fleet falter. They saw the Terran ghosts rise, and they remembered Earth. Not as rubble, but as vengeance. The Sol system was no longer a graveyard. It was a throne. The Terran fleet orbited the shattered remains of Earth, not in mourning, but in dominance. After the failed assault by the Chimera fleet, the message was clear. Humanity was not extinct. It had evolved into something worse, an echo that couldn't be silenced. Across the galactic communication grid, images of the battle spread like a virus. Dominion propaganda teams tried to suppress the footage, tried to reframe the defeat as a strategic withdrawal. But it was useless. The truth slipped through every firewall, every sensor. Entire worlds started asking the same question. What if the Terrans are right? In a slum city on the industrial planet Brevith Prime, a miner named Kel sat in a broken cafe, replaying the battle over and over on a smuggled data pad. Around him, dozens of workers huddled in silence, watching Jace Harlan's fleet erase Chimera vessels like they were made of paper. "My brother died fighting for the Dominion," Kel muttered, his voice low. "But maybe he died for the wrong side." An old man coughed beside him. "The Dominion promised us peace, but it only gave us chains." Kel looked back at the screen. "Then maybe it's time we break them." And so it began. Small revolts, then larger ones, first on the outer worlds, where Dominion control was weakest, then closer to the core. What had once been whispers became chants, murmurs turned into uprisings, and one name was painted in blood and fire on the walls of Dominion buildings: Terran. Dravox stood before the High Tribunal, fury boiling under his scales. The chamber was dimmer than usual. Some of the core world power grids had been disrupted. A sign of decay, of slipping control. "This isn't war," he hissed. "It's infection. They're not conquering us. They're making us doubt ourselves." One of the elders, a withered dominion with metal threads fused into his skull, leaned forward. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach, offer them sanctuary, absorb them." Dravox's claws slammed into the table. "You want to negotiate with ghosts?" "They are not ghosts," the elder said. "They are what we made them." The room fell silent. Dravox's eyes narrowed. "Then we unmake them." Meanwhile, aboard the nemesis of silence, Jace Harlan and Ty Lauren reviewed intercepted communications from the Dominion capital. "They're scared," Ty said. "Even their generals are second-guessing." Jace didn't smile. He couldn't. "Not yet. Fear isn't enough," he said. "We need them broken. We need them to beg." Ty raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? Mercy isn't in the game plan." "This isn't mercy," Jace said. "This is justice served raw." He turned to his tactician. "Prepare the Harbinger. It's time." The Harbinger of Grief was the oldest ship in the Terran fleet, cobbled together during the first decade after the Purge. It wasn't beautiful, it wasn't fast, but it carried something no Dominion ship could withstand. The names of the dead. Every hull plate etched with the identities of those lost in the genocide. Every system coded with pain and memory. Every weapon driven by a singular directive, make them feel it. It was a ship built not to win. It was built to hurt. The target, Selverin Prime, a jewel in the Dominion's crown, a luxury world, wealthy, untouched by war, filled with nobles, commanders, and Dominion aristocrats who drank wine while Earth burned. The Harbinger didn't announce itself. It simply appeared in orbit. One noble stared out his window at the dark silhouette in the sky. "What ship is that?" Seconds later, his mansion turned to ash. The Harbinger didn't fire traditional weapons. It released dirge cannons, energy pulses that infected buildings and systems with grief simulations. People experienced the purge firsthand. For 10 minutes, every citizen of Kelveron relived Earth's final moments. Bombs, fire, screams, loss. Some went mad, some never woke up. Some took their own lives on the spot. And when the simulation ended, Jace broadcast a single message. "You watched us die. Now you watch yourselves." The Harbinger vanished as silently as it had come. Kael Oryx watched the footage from his medbay aboard the Cradle of Silence, still recovering from the battle at Sol. His hybrid body ached, his mind even more. He saw the message Jace sent, heard his voice. It struck a chord he had buried long ago. "They're not warriors," he said aloud. "They're reckoners." He pulled up Dominion files on Earth's destruction, the videos, the decisions, the protocols, and the lies, so many lies. They told him Earth refused peace. They told him humans struck first. But it was all theater. The Dominion never gave humanity a chance. Kyle looked in the mirror and saw not a hybrid. He saw a traitor to his blood. Back in Dominion Prime, panic grew. Worlds stopped sending resources. Rebellions flared on the communications grid every hour. Worse, Dominion citizens were starting to sympathize with the Terrans. Even some military officers began leaking data. Jace Harlan had become more than a name. He had become a symbol. The flame Dominion thought they had extinguished was now an inferno. On the Nemesis, Jace stood before a wall of shattered Dominion helmets taken from battles across the galaxy, each one a reminder. "Message from Oryx," Ty said. "He wants to meet." Jace turned slowly. "Where?" "Alone. No escorts. He says he wants to talk, not fight." Jace considered this, then nodded. Prepare my ship. The coordinates Kale Oryx transmitted led to a cold, forgotten moon on the edge of neutral space. No satellites, no sentries, no mines, just dust and ice under a dead sun. It was a place the Dominion had once used for interrogations, before deciding even that was too merciful. Now it was silent. The nemesis of silence didn't follow Jace to the moon. He arrived in an old Terran interceptor, barely held together by memory and rust. No escort, no weapons online, just him and the ghosts he carried. Kyle was already waiting. He stood at the edge of a ruined structure, cloaked in a dark Dominion coat, but unarmed. His hybrid eyes watched Jace approach with the weariness of a man walking into his own funeral. Funny, Jace said, stepping into the open. You picked a graveyard. Kyle's voice was quiet. Seemed appropriate. They stared at each other. No threats, no drawn weapons, just two men, shaped by the same history, standing on opposite ends of what it became. I didn't think you'd come alone, Kale said finally. Jace shrugged. I figured if you wanted me dead, you'd try a long time ago. You had chances. Kale looked away, jaw clenched. I did. Silence settled. Then Jace asked the question that had festered for years. Why? Kale didn't answer right away. He knelt, brushing dust off an old Terran symbol carved into the stone, likely by a prisoner who died screaming. When the Dominion found me after Europa, I didn't know who I was. All I knew was fire. Screams! You were gone. The rest of the resistance had been turned to ash. He stood slowly. They took me in, fed me, trained me, showed me purpose. I thought they were giving me a second chance. Jace's voice cracked like dry glass. They murdered your mother, and you thanked them for it? Kale's jaw twitched. They made me thank them. That stopped Jace cold. Kale's voice trembled now. They burned the memories out of my head, replaced them with programs, indoctrination. I didn't even remember her face until last year. Jace stepped closer. And now? Kale met his eyes. Now I see her every time I close my eyes. And I see you, the man who carried on when the rest of us died, the man who turned pain into something the galaxy fears. He paused, then added, but fear doesn't build a future. Jace laughed bitterly. Number. But it makes a damn good start. Kyle sighed. We're burning everything. If we keep going, there won't be a galaxy left to inherit. That's the point, Jace snapped. We inherited nothing, just bones and ash. That's what they left us. Kale stepped forward now. And what do you leave behind? Another cycle of hatred? Another empire of terror? You're becoming what you hated. Jace's face hardened. Number, we're becoming what they deserved. Kale shook his head. Number, that's what you wanted. But not everyone who survived wants this path. Jace's silence was telling. You came here to kill me? Kale asked. I came here to see if you were worth saving, Jace replied. You're still not sure which side you belong on. Kale's expression darkened. And you are? You don't even know what you are anymore. I'm the last voice of the dead, Jace said, and I'm going to make sure they're heard. Even if it kills everyone else? Jace didn't blink. Especially if it kills everyone else. Far above the moon, in orbit, Dominion stealth drones observed the meeting, streaming everything back to Drevox. He watched the footage in silence. His advisors whispered behind him, eager to strike, to end it. Drevox raised a claw. No, he said. Let them speak. The seed of fracture lies between them. If we're lucky, they'll tear each other apart. On the moon, Kyle turned his back. I've done things I can't undo, he said. Ordered strikes, executions, but I never enjoyed it. Jace stepped up behind him. I didn't either, at first. Kyle looked over his shoulder. And now? I sleep just fine. Kyle looked away again. You're not him anymore, Kyle said. The man who protected children in the Martian slums, who took me in even though I was half Dominion. No, Jace said, stepping away. That man died when Earth did. They stood in silence again. Kyle finally asked, If I walk away, what happens? Jace didn't look at him. Then walk, but know this. The next time we meet, I won't hesitate. Kyle nodded. Fair. Jace turned back toward his ship, but Kale called out once more. There's a Dominion relic site, deep core. They're building something. Something worse than Chimera. I couldn't stop it. Jace stopped walking. They call it Oblivion Seed. It's not a weapon. It's a rewrite. Total memory collapse on a galactic scale. Jace turned, slowly. Why tell me? Because I remember now, Kale said. I remember who I was, who we were. Jace stared at him, then nodded once. Then you have one chance to prove it. Hours later, aboard the Nemesis, Jace stood before the war table. Ty leaned in. That was risky. He needed to look in my eyes, Jace said. Needed to decide who he was. And if he betrays us? Jace looked at the stars. Then I finish what the Dominion started, with him included. The Dominion's core vaults were older than their empire. Hidden within a dying star's corona, they weren't built. They were buried. Sealed by ancient codes and technologies stolen from species long dead, even the Dominion's highest-ranking officials had only partial access to the information stored inside. It was here, in the blood-locked vaults of Sanctum Null, that the program known as Oblivion Seed was born. Kyle Oryx had only ever seen fragments, encrypted blueprints, censored transcripts. One line that stuck with him, carved into the margin of a classified Dominion memo. Erase the sin by erasing the memory. Now, for the first time in his fractured life, he returned not as a loyal instrument of Dominion will, but as a spy for the very people the Dominion had tried to erase. The journey to Sanctum Null wasn't tracked. Kyle flew a black ship with no transponder, no Dominion insignia, just silent engines and an atmosphere so cold it could freeze oxygen. He'd expected a dead world. Instead, he found a thriving station orbiting the core. No lights, no defenses, just waiting. And that terrified him more than any fleet ever had. Requesting clearance, Kale spoke into the void. No response. Then a cold female voice answered, not through his comm, but directly into his mind. Kyle Oryx, access level hybrid. Welcome home. The docking clamps seized his ship. Meanwhile, the nemesis of silence prepared to follow. Jace Harlan paced the bridge, gaze locked on the holographic projection of Sanctum Null. You trust him? Ty asked, arms crossed. No. Then why are we doing this? Jace's eyes narrowed. Because I don't need to trust him. I just need him to open the door. Within Sanctum Null, Kyle stepped into corridors older than memory. Every wall whispered, not in language, but in feeling. Shame, desperation, obsession. This was where the Dominion's soul had been buried, deep beneath its polished cruelty and military supremacy. Kyle passed preserved chambers of extinct species, their minds downloaded into infinite loops of pain. He saw simulations of Earth's destruction over and over, rendered from hundreds of angles, studied like art. And then he found the core, a pulsating sphere of black glass, humming with something worse than power. Memory. He approached, and the voice returned. Initiate sequence, Kyle. Reclaim the forgotten. He paused, and then placed his hand on the interface. Above Sanctum Null, the Nemesis arrived. Dominion sensors went dark, The Terran fleet spread around the star's edge like vultures circling a wound. Jace opened a channel. Kyle, you in? Static. Then... I've reached it. You were right. It's not a weapon. It's a reset. Ty looked over. Explain. Kale's voice cracked. It doesn't fire. It doesn't destroy. It deletes whole star systems, cultures, species. It rewrites history from the inside out. Jace's face was stone. That's how they won, Kale continued. That's why there's no record of other empires, of what came before them. They didn't just conquer. They edited the galaxy. Silence on the bridge. Then Ty muttered, They were never the first empire. No, Jace said. Just the last one anyone remembers. Back in the Sanctum core, Kyle's hand trembled. If he activated the next phase, the Dominion's greatest secret would unravel. So would he. He could already feel the code scratching behind his eyes, trying to rewrite his own past. He pulled his hand away, and alarms screamed. Unauthorized hesitation detected, the voice said, engaging fallback protocol. The sphere pulsed, and the walls opened. Kale stared in horror. It wasn't a device, it was alive. Thousands of bodies suspended in stasis, neurons wired into a collective consciousness, a brain, not artificial, human, harvested during the purge. Dear God, Kyle whispered. They hadn't erased humanity. They had absorbed it, and now they were trying to become it. Back aboard the Nemesis, Jace's systems exploded with alerts. Energy spike inside the vault, Ty shouted. Jace didn't hesitate. Send in the hounds. Dozens of Terran boarding crafts detached from the fleet, racing toward the Sanctum like knives. Kyle ran, security drones activated, but he knew the corridors, knew where the Dominion's blind spots were. He ducked through a broken medical lab, past clone tanks filled with distorted human-Dominion hybrids, failed experiments of assimilation. He reached a sealed chamber and activated a signal beacon. Jace, you hearing this? They've built a sentient rewrite engine out of us, out of the dead. Jace's voice thundered into his comm. Shut it down. Kyle slammed the override key he'd stolen during his Dominion days into the main console. Nothing. Then a face flickered onto the screen. Drevox. You disappoint me, Kale, he said coldly, but I always knew your blood was polluted. I know what you did, Kale hissed. You know nothing, Drevox replied. The seed is not just survival. It is evolution. You and your kind were just the raw material. The chamber shook. The Sanctum was awakening. The Terran boarding teams breached the vault. What they saw inside stopped them cold. The stasis bodies. The memories flickering through neural networks. Children, old men, soldiers, lovers, friends, all stored, all looping, all forgotten. Captain, one soldier whispered into the comm. We're standing in a mausoleum built from our people. Jace's voice came through. Then light a match. Kyle reached the central override. He had one last choice. Blow the core, or link with it. If he linked, he could feed it truth. Every crime, every horror, every scream the Dominion ever silenced. It would mean his mind, his identity, everything. But it would end the lie. He looked at the interface, and then at the image of his mother, flickering from the memory feed. I'm sorry, he whispered, and plunged his hand into the light. The Nemesis saw it first, a pulse of white radiating from Sanctum Null. Not destructive, restorative. Suddenly, archives across the galaxy unlocked, lost languages returned, extinct species reappeared in records. The truth spread like wildfire. The Dominion's greatest weapon had become its greatest confession. Drevox watched his empire collapse in real time. One system, then 10, then 100. Rebellions didn't rise this time. They ignited. His command network flooded with mutinies. And in the middle of it all, Jace's fleet, unstoppable, unforgiving. Jace stood at the helm. Sanctum Null burned behind them. And Kyle. Gone. Mind uploaded into the seed. Not lost, just beyond. Jace closed his eyes. For Earth, Ty stepped forward. Orders, sir? Jace looked toward the Dominion core worlds. Now we finish it. The Dominion was collapsing. Not from a single battle, not from a superweapon, from truth. History, once twisted and edited into propaganda, now bled raw across every screen, every archive, every whispered conversation in the outer colonies. The long-silenced story of humanity's genocide was no longer myth. It was documented, verified, undeniable. Systems that once screamed loyalty now echoed with rebellion. Sectors shut off their hyperlanes, refusing to fuel Dominion dreadnoughts. Workers stopped assembling weapons. Soldiers defected or mutinied. Loyalist governors were executed by their own citizens. The Terran fleet didn't need to fire another shot, but they would. At the edge of Dominion Prime, the heart of the Empire, Jace Harlan stood aboard the nemesis of silence, watching as the last wall of orbital defense towers powered up. They know we're coming, Ty Loren said at his side. They should, Jace replied. We promised we would. Below, the capital planet loomed, immense, industrial, and bloated with centuries of conquest. It was beautiful in the way cancer looked beautiful under a microscope, symmetrical, complex, and entirely poisonous. The Dominion had ruled from it for over 10,000 years. Today, that rule would end. Dravox stood at the central command chamber of the Dominion Citadel. Only a handful of generals remained with him. Loyalists or fools. It didn't matter. Screens blinked with reports of uprisings. Others simply turned black, systems gone dark as more planets went rogue or submitted to Terran control. Bring the Skyfire array online, Dravox hissed. An officer hesitated. Sir, that will burn the upper atmosphere. It'll kill our own citizens. Dravox turned slowly. Then let them burn. They've already betrayed us. Above the planet, the Terran fleet broke formation. Jace gave the order. Phase 2. Unleash the silence. The silence protocol wasn't a fleet maneuver. It was memory-made weapon. A targeted atmospheric drop. Millions of nanobeacons carrying raw memories of Earth's destruction, injected into Dominion comms, visual channels, even through atmospheric particle dispersal. Cities below stopped functioning. People dropped what they were doing and fell to their knees, screaming, sobbing, or frozen in trance as they experienced Earth's last day. In a command bunker, a Dominion commander wept openly, muttering, "They screamed for help, and we laughed. We laughed." Ty watched from the bridge. "We're not just conquering them," he said. "We're unmaking them." Jace didn't respond. His eyes were locked on one blinking indicator on the display. "Target acquired," he finally said. Ty stepped closer. "Dravox?" Jace nodded. "Bring me to him." Ty hesitated. "You sure?" "You want him dead more than anyone. Let the ship fire." Jace's voice was steady. "Number I want him to know." Jace landed in the capital himself, escorted by a squad of Terran sentinels. Former humans turned cybernetic Avengers. Their armor bore the names of Terran cities lost in the Purge: Nairobi, Berlin, Kyoto, Vancouver, Buenos Aires. The city was burning when they entered, not from Terran fire, from within. The people had risen up. Statues of Dominion warlords were dragged through the streets, set ablaze. Schools once teaching false Dominion history now blasted recordings of Earth's last transmissions, cries of children, defiant broadcasts, desperate final prayers. Jace marched through it all, unstoppable. The Dominion Citadel was in lockdown. But the Sentinels had a code. Jace's code. He had been to this place before, as a prisoner, years ago. He still remembered the layout. The smell. The screams. They breached the command chamber in under a minute. Inside, Dravox waited. Not armed. Not commanding. Just waiting. His robes hung heavy. His eyes, once so certain, now swam with something else. Confusion? Bitterness? Maybe fear? "So," Dravox muttered, "this is what justice looks like?" Jace stepped forward. "Number, this is what memory looks like. We gave you the gift of seeing what you tried to erase." "You were an infestation," Dravox spat. "A violent, erratic species. You'd have destroyed everything." "You destroyed everything first," Jace interrupted. "We begged. We bargained. You answered with fire." Dravox's voice broke. "And now you've burned us." Jace stepped closer. "Not yet." He drew a knife, not Terran steel, but Dominion alloy, taken from a dead commander years ago. He placed it on the table. "You remember Europa Station?" Dravox blinked. "That was your first purge, wasn't it?" Jace said, eyes like knives. "You ordered it, wiped out everything, civilians, scientists, children." Dravox's jaw clenched. "I found one survivor there," Jace continued. "Half burned, barely breathing. You know what he said when I carried him out?" No answer. "He said, 'The stars lied to us.'" Jace picked up the knife. Dravox swallowed hard. "What now? You kill me? Parade my corpse?" "No," Jace said. "You live." Dravox blinked. "You live. You watch. You witness. Every rebellion. Every planet that tears down your banners. Every child that learns the truth you tried to bury." He leaned in close. "And when the last Dominion system crumbles, when the last citizen spits on your name, then, and only then, you'll understand what we became." Jace turned, leaving the knife embedded in the table. That night, the Dominion flag was torn from the Citadel and replaced with a single symbol, a black sun, outlined with Terran letters. "We remember." The galaxy watched. As the Dominion fell, system by system, the Terran fleet didn't seize control. They didn't replace one empire with another. They left, letting each planet decide its path. Some reformed, some burned, some mourned. But all of them remembered. And that was enough. In the months that followed, Jace Harlan never returned to Earth's ruins. He didn't need to. Earth was no longer a place. It was a vow. Back aboard the Nemesis, Ty joined him on the observation deck. "You did it," Ty said. "They're gone." Jace didn't respond for a while. Then, finally, "Number. They're not gone. Just corrected." Ty exhaled. "What now?" Jace looked at the stars. "There are still lies out there. Still weapons like Sanctum Null. Still ghosts." Ty smiled. "Then I guess we've got work to do." And so the Armada moved on. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as shadows. A myth reborn. A warning etched into the bones of the galaxy. The Terrans are coming. And this time, they're watching. The stars were quiet again. Not because war had ended, but because a silence had returned. The kind of silence that followed truth when it finally had its day. In the outer edges of Sector 92, once a Dominion stronghold, now an open graveyard of their war machines, a boy named Corin walked alone through fields of rusting armor. He wore no uniform, no rank, just a tattered jacket with the words Earthborn scrawled across the back, though he was born centuries after Earth died. He stopped in front of a scorched Dominion helmet, picked it up, and stared into the empty eye sockets. His father had told him stories about what these things used to mean. Fear, control, certainty. Now they were relics, museum pieces, proof that even the powerful could be made small. Corin dropped the helmet and moved on, the wind carrying dust and ghosts alike. Elsewhere, in a former Dominion databank now converted into a memorial hall, Holograms played endlessly. Raw Terran footage, survivor testimonies, intercepted Dominion documents. People came from all systems, to watch, to weep, to remember. Some came with rage in their hearts, others with shame, but none left unchanged. One recording, on repeat, had become a symbol of the new galaxy. A young girl's voice, one of the last children recorded on Earth before the Purge, singing a nursery rhyme off-key in a Martian classroom. She was never named, but her voice haunted 1,000 worlds. In a hidden Terran base built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, a new generation trained under the cold blue lights of simulation chambers. Not to conquer, to prepare. Jace Harlan had warned them before he disappeared. Victory is not a guarantee of peace. It's just the right to keep fighting with your eyes open. Some believed he had died after the fall of Dominion Prime. Others swore they'd seen him, on distant moons, in rebellion camps, even helping children escape pirate systems. The truth. Jace had simply walked away, not from the war, from the title. He was no longer a captain, a leader, or even a soldier. He had become something far more dangerous. A myth. In a deep stasis pod aboard the preserved husk of the Harbinger of Grief, Kyle Orex remained asleep, or rather, uploaded. His consciousness forever merged with the ruins of the Dominion's memory engine. But his presence could still be felt, in whispers, in dreams, in system anomalies that pulsed with encrypted warnings written in hybrid code. He was neither alive nor dead. Just there, watching. The Dominion, what remained of it, tried to rebuild. Scattered remnants of warlords, AI enclaves, and loyalist cults rose in the shadows, but they no longer inspired fear. Now they provoked pity. And when they crossed the line? The Terran Armada returned, not to occupy, to remind. A single ship would appear in orbit. Sometimes it didn't even fire. It just broadcast that girl's song. That was enough. Some systems asked if Terrans would ever form a government, a coalition, a replacement empire. But the Terrans said no. We're not here to lead, the message always said. We're here to remember. And so they patrolled in silence, like the star's immune system, like memory's last defenders. In the end, the galaxy didn't become peaceful. It became honest. New powers rose, but none dared use the word purge. None dared rewrite their history, because they knew someone was watching, and the silence could end. Back in that scrap field, young Corin sat beneath a cracked statue of a Dominion general. He pulled out a rusted Terran compad. On it, he played a recording. Jace Harlan's voice. Not yelling, not preaching, just speaking. They thought we were dead, thought we would vanish into the black, but you don't kill memory, you bury it, and memory always digs itself back up. The stars are wide, the void is patient, but when you lie to it, it remembers. Corin looked up, smiled, and whispered the words every child in the new galaxy now knew by heart. We remember.